Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of In Depth. I'm Keren Margolis here with Sasco Digital Assets and our CEO, Omar Sabek. So today's in-depth episode is about Bitcoin versus altcoins. If you haven't already watched our Bitcoin bite-sized video, please go ahead and watch that. Come back and join us here. So Omar, we just went into a whole video about Bitcoin versus altcoins. We talked about Bitcoin being the only fully decentralized coin that has a recognizable brand, longevity, momentum, all of this stuff. You hear the term Bitcoin maximalist tossed around all the time, and I think it sounds kind of negative. Like people are so into Bitcoin to the exclusion of other currencies. And my question to you is, are you a Bitcoin maximalist? If yes, what does that mean to you?
So let's talk about, I'm just going to shift the conversation a little bit.
Okay, that was a lot.
I want to talk about open permissionless systems.
Okay.
What are open permissionless systems? Bitcoin is an open permissionless system. You don't have to ask anyone for permission. You can plug into the network. And if you are providing services to people, if you want to extend those services in a traditional world, you have to go and ask permission to the banks.
Right.
And the banks, have all different kinds of criteria and they'll make decisions. You don't have to do it with Bitcoin. Plug into the network and you're able to provide services. So it's decentralized and it's permissionless and it's open and it has an incentive structure around that to maintain that through time.
And it's the only one.
It's the only one that's designed and engineered that way. And most importantly, the users that use it have that same kind of ethos.
Right.
And so you can trust that the user base, the user community, the miners, there's two parts of the user community, the miners and the people that are invested, the institutions, the banks, whoever it is, the people themselves that own a Bitcoin, that's the other part of the user community. They can run nodes and it's completely open. So what other systems are like that? The internet's like that, right? You can be anywhere in the world. You can, if you have if you're using the right kind of protocols, or to put it a different way, the right kind of rules, then you can communicate on the internet.
Right.
Would you consider anyone to be an internet maximalist?
I wouldn't even know what that meant.
I mean, what's the
alternative? The
alternative were America Online, which was a closed network.
I was into it and I loved it.
It was great because you probably didn't have access to the internet, or the internet didn't have an infrastructure to support, a really good user experience.
Yep.
So I think the idea of a Bitcoin maximalist is if something came around that was better and gave more freedom to, more people, and it was open and it was permissionless and improved on Bitcoin, then you probably, I would be a huge advocate for that, and I would probably be called a maximalist there.
So you're not a maximalist in the sense that people kind of mean it now, which is this really dogmatic refusal to acknowledge other cryptocurrencies. You're sort of a default maximalist because you think Bitcoin's the best option right now. I
think Bitcoin's the best option right now for people that understand what it is as a monetary network. That being said, there's other altcoins there that, there's Ethereum and there's so many that have different values, that have different incentive structures, and people should do their research. And if they like any of those things, they should absolutely consider investing in them.
Well, that's a perfect transition to our next question, which is, are you invested in any altcoins yourself, like you personally? And do you, maybe endorse is too strong of a word, but are you into any of them? Do you think that they do something Bitcoin doesn't?
Sorry, I used to be. I used to be invested in Ethereum. And I was invested in Ethereum until they had a couple of hacks. And the way they handled the hacks was more telling about, the power structure that exists within Ethereum, because they were able effectively to roll back the blockchain, and they made some decisions that, proved to me that it wasn't, fully decentralized,
right.
And it's just too risky. If I'm going to be putting money in something, I want to be able to understand what that risk is. And because the decisions that were being made, and the fact that you can change the monetary policy of Ethereum at any point in time, just doesn't instill in me I don't know how to factor in that risk. If I don't know how to factor in that risk, I don't know how to price in the risk. If I don't know how to price in the risk, then what's my capital allocation going to be? That's the kind of everyone is really responsible for valuing things on their own. And if you're not, I could do it with Bitcoin because I could understand the code, I could read the code, I could see what it's doing, I could look at the community, I could understand what their values are, I could see how it dealt with problems over time, and it gives me confidence that it has this anti-fragile property that I think is very important for any anything that's going to be as disruptive as Bitcoin.
So there's no altcoin that you currently hold?
No, just Bitcoin.
I mean, me too, but sort of by accident. Yours is on purpose.
Yes.
Do you think that in the future you might invest in a currency that's not Bitcoin that exists online?
Sure. If something better comes along, absolutely. Why not? Absolutely. I don't see it happening, though, because we have to look into the way Bitcoin was released. And I don't know how you recreate those optimal conditions where, you have Satoshi Nakamoto going on to a cryptography forum and saying, here's my crazy idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
The fact that it exists today, that blockchain exists and that people have made a lot of money from them kind of alters the view. And it's not, I don't think it would be as egalitarian. I don't think it would be as, I just don't think there's any way to recreate those conditions.
Yeah.
So I don't know how a coin can be released today that is net better than Bitcoin.
And we talked about it in the bite-sized video as well, how energy intensive it is to turn a thing from not a thing into a thing. Because you have to make the thing and then get people to care about the thing. And to my understanding, nothing has really come close to Bitcoin in that respect.
Right, and that's proof of work, what you're describing. And the key thing about proof of work is that anybody can do it. You can buy a miner and you can plug into the network, and you don't need a massive investment. It's the same, it's the same access that anybody would have. You can't do that in Ethereum. You can't do that in the proof of stake coins. In the proof of stake coins, the people that have the most of them control the rules, control the way the network works, and they make good decisions. But if the decision-making property of the governance of that coin over time resides in the hands of the few, then we can understand how that could be problematic, right? So the more you decentralize control and you give people the destiny over their own money, I think it's better. But that being said, Ethereum doesn't purport itself to be a monetary unit. It's a platform for decentralized applications. It holds a monetary value because you buy these coins and you can trade them. But it's not a pure play monetary network the way Bitcoin is. So I think that's an important distinction as well.
So do you see these altcoins as being something that kind of pops in and out of existence, or do you think that some of them have legs and we just have yet to see that?
Well, they can't be destroyed, so they're going to be around forever. So as far as existence goes, they're going to be around forever. And I think it's an interesting world where, depending on how they're promoted, and depending on how they're marketed, and what their roadmaps are, it all changes perception of them. So you do see coins go up and coins go down. But if you price these coins in Bitcoin, most of these coins go down, especially the older ones, go down in value over time to Bitcoin. So I think long term, they'll always exist. Will they ever beat Bitcoin? There's a lot of theories out there. Me personally, I don't see it happening. I see Bitcoin as being the apex predator of all altcoins because of the properties that it has, the unique properties that it has.
So if people are watching this and they're thinking about Bitcoin as being like a medium to long-term investment, could one think of an altcoin, since it seems to be more ephemeral, and also to sort of they all seem to reference Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin's the standard. Could that be a viable short-term investment for people, or do you think that for someone who's risk averse, it's just not worth it?
Well, there's investors and traders that do just that. They use a smaller altcoin as a vehicle to create wealth for themselves, and then the idea is that they're going to sell it to buy Bitcoin.
Okay.
Very risky.
Right.
Very risky.
Sounds
very
fun.
Hard to do.
Okay. Is it that hard to do?
It's kind of like playing, because you don't know which coin is the one that's going to pop, you know, and you don't know what the timing is going to be. There's just so many risks. It's like whack-a-mole. especially in 2017. That's what we saw.
Right.
It was, it was a new altcoin every week, and whatever altcoin was created would pop, and it would create a lot of value for the users.
Right. I remember when ICOs were a whole thing before people instantly got sick of them and realized that coin offerings are not the same as a cryptocurrency that's viable.
Yeah, exactly. ICOs in 2017, DeFi tokens now.
Right.
DeFi tokens have a lot of promise. They're very experimental now. We'll see what happens. That's an ecosystem that's very exciting. It's going to develop. It's going to provide a lot of services to a lot of people. So I think there's really exciting things there. But that strategy of I'm going to, catch up and get as much Bitcoin as I can by playing the altcoin game.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. And I give people that are successful a lot of credit. I don't know how to do it. It's really it takes a lot of, I don't know if it even takes skill. I think it takes a lot of luck. So and then you got to consider if you take that dollar and just put it in Bitcoin instead, and eliminated all of the, stress and everything else that comes along with trying to, effectively play roulette is what you're doing.
That sounds so fun. I wasn't going to do it before you said that, but now I cannot resist. Now I have to.
I wish you a lot of luck.
Well, it's funny. You're talking about altcoins now the way that people talk about Bitcoin now. I think that people think that Bitcoin, and I understand it. There's a lot of information. It's hard to get through. But people think that Bitcoin is this very, up and down, wild, volatile thing with a confusing basis. But actually, that's maybe a little bit of a lag in just people's understanding of the cryptocurrency sphere, because Bitcoin seems to have sort of overcome those obstacles, and now the altcoin sphere is where there is chaos.
Yeah, I would agree. And to the education piece, for sure. I mean, everyone has to take their time going through the process. And I had to go through that process. I don't know anyone that's gone through the process of understanding it and ever said, no, I don't like it. I'm going back to, the non-crypto world or non-Bitcoin world. Yeah,
right.
But everyone, it's a lagging process. The sooner you get started educating yourself on it, the sooner you get started, putting in the time, I think the better, because it really is a fundamental change to the way money works, and it's not going away. It's a very good point. And that chaos, we had a lot of tumult in the Bitcoin community for a long time over what the values were of the community. And that was a process. It's this very similar process that religions go through, right? What are our values? People's values change. Do we adopt those values? Do we, start to create sects?
Forks, whatever.
Exactly. A fork is another way of saying a sect. And that, people can leave the community and have their own set of values. And that's what you saw with Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah. Okay.
Because their values were, instead of Bitcoin becoming, instead of Bitcoin being like a store of value and super decentralized, and giving anyone the ability to run a node, the Bitcoin Cash folks, they were really intent on it being a utility, having high utility as a payments and transaction system.
So what happened? How does the story end? What happened to Bitcoin Cash?
You can still do payment transactions either way, right?
So you don't need Bitcoin Cash.
No,
transact
you
with
can
Bitcoin.
transact, but the way it works, because Bitcoin is it comes down to the size of the blocks. So there's small blockers, and those are the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin values, and the big blockers, which are the Bitcoin Cash, values. The small blockers really believe in decentralization above all, and so in order to maintain decentralization, you want anyone to be able to run a node, anyone to be able to download the blockchain, and you can't download the blockchain if it's too big.
Right.
Bitcoin Cash people, on the other hand, they wanted people to be able to very quickly and easily transact with it, not have to pay high fees. That means bigger blocks, but that also means expensive nodes. And if it's expensive, then only kind of corporations and banks and it wouldn't be easy for the normal person to be able to run a node. So Bitcoin Cash split off, and they went their way, and Bitcoin went its way. And
But is Bitcoin Cash a successful currency?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it successful compared to Bitcoin?
Right.
No, it's lost about 98% of its value to Bitcoin. So,
interesting.
But it has a happy community. They're able to transact on it.
Okay.
It's, the adoption rate's not as high as Bitcoin, but if they're happy and they have their values, who are we to say what's right or wrong?
That's so diplomatic. I mean, I will. I reserve that right.
So since then, Bitcoin developed a layer 2, and that's it's called the Lightning Network to facilitate fast and nearly free transactions. So it effectively solved the problem of scalability, in Bitcoin.
So does every altcoin sacrifice decentralization in order to make whatever adjustments they want to make to the Bitcoin protocol? What is the sacrifice?
Yeah, absolutely, they do. There's a series of trade-offs that need to be made whenever you're making any change to any software, especially if it affects the performance. So when we talk about Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash, it really came down to scalability. Bitcoin is very conservative, and in order for your transaction to go through, you may have to pay a little more to get it into the first block. And by paying more, you're prioritizing your transaction above other ones. And that's great, but if you want to buy a coffee, you don't want to, if you're buying a coffee for, let's say, $5, a fancy coffee, you don't want to spend $5 or even more to get that coffee. So, you need scalability, and there's trade-offs. The way Bitcoin solved it was by creating a layer 2, the Lightning Network. The way other coins solved it, Bitcoin Cash, they just created bigger blocks, but they reduced the ability for the decentralization aspect. So they kind of, they degraded that feature of the network. Others take, they take liberties on security of the network. So they'll sacrifice security for other features. They'll sacrifice scalability for features. There's so many different trade-offs. These are all engineering problems. And it really comes down to, first, what do we want the coin to be? What are our values? And how do we engineer a blockchain to support those values?
So Bitcoin maximalist is not exactly the right word for you. It sounds like you are a decentralization purist.
Freak.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever gives the most power to most people, and also whatever code set ensures that no one would be able to centralize power.
Right.
That's the idea.
So last question here for our in-depth. What happens if there's disagreement within the Bitcoin community? So unlike Ethereum, there isn't a company or organization that's making decisions, right? No rulers, just rules. But surely things happen and stuff comes up. So how is that adjudicated within the Bitcoin network?
It happens through discussion on a mailing list. So it would happen between the Bitcoin core developers.
And what does that mean exactly for Bitcoin to have developers if it is decentralized?
So there's a group of Bitcoin core developers that are incentivized to full-time maintain the code, write the code, improve the code, and they're getting inputs from really anyone. You can send them an email and say, hey, I have a great idea for Bitcoin. And they'd look at it, and if you are able to gain traction and it is really a good idea, they'll update the code. But it's a lot of discussion. And a lot of this discussion also spills over into social media. And we saw that with the Blocksize Wars. Right? A lot of discussion was in social media. It was in conferences. So it's a broad discussion. But ultimately, let's say the code is written, the features put in there. The users the miners have a decision and the users have a decision to adopt the code. So they could, and every feature is different. They could do it various ways.
And adopt the code means download it?
Download it and install it. That's probably the simplest way. With Taproot, for example, that was a recent...
What's Taproot?
Taproot was a recent improvement. It was a set of improvements to Bitcoin that improved privacy, that improved other aspects of, how really just the inner workings of Bitcoin. And the way that was adopted was the miners, when they mined a block, they would signal with that mined block that they supported Taproot. And you needed to get above, I think it was above 90 or 95% consensus for Taproot to be adopted. But there was also a circuit breaker too. If they didn't adopt it, then the user community can download the a updated version of the Bitcoin core software, put it on their node, and if enough users did that, it would also that was like a backup way for Taproot to be adopted.
So it's a true consensus process
with checks and balances between the miners and the user community.
So what happens if the software or the code is recoded in some way to update it or whatever needs to happen, and certain people opt out?
By not downloading the code?
Yeah, exactly.
Then their node wouldn't accept new blocks. If the consensus was on the updated code, then they wouldn't accept new blocks, and it would effectively be nothing would happen to their Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because all they would have to do is upgrade it to the latest code, take their Bitcoin. Maybe they make a decision as well. Not only are they not going to download the code, but they're going to get rid of their Bitcoin. They're going to give it away or sell it or whatever.
Idiots.
So yeah, but everyone has an opportunity to decide what they want to do.
So the system really runs itself.
And that's one of the most amazing things about it. It just kind of exists in the ether, and it's backed by the one thing that no one can argue about, and that's math. And I think that's fascinating. You know, if you really break it down to
it's
first
so nerdy
principles,
and interesting.
Yeah, because you can't argue with math. You can argue about literally everything else,
Right?
but you can't argue about math. And so that's the core underpinning. And then you have a layer of cryptography on top of that, and you have a layer of software code on top of that, values, virtues. You have, then you have all the social constructs. And really what Bitcoin solves is the issue of trust, right? And we had an amazing run through human history where you could trust something physical like gold, and then we had to grow the economy, so we had to trust banks, and then we had to trust the central bank, and now we live in the information age, and we need a new system, and now we can trust math, we can trust code, we can trust each other, and that's what Bitcoin represents.
Yep, that's really interesting. I think that's going to wrap it up for this video.
Thank you very much, Keren. That was great.
Thank you, Omar. That was great. Thank you. So thank you for watching this video. Please give us a like if you enjoyed it. Leave us your comments, your thoughts, your questions down below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. If you're not already subscribed, hit the notification bell so that you get notified first with all of our content. You don't miss any of our hot new videos. And stay tuned for the next video.